Hello YouTube, it's Zach. Today I would like to talk about something that's not very often talked about. That is Saudi Arabia's system of education, particularly how they're teaching extremism to children. As many of you likely know, I grew up in Saudi Arabia, and I went through 12 years of Saudi schooling. And so this issue is very important to me. But whoever you, dear viewer, might be, I hope that by the end of this video, you're gonna grasp the true importance of this issue as well. And so I ask you to please watch this video till the end. The Saudi Arabian Ministry of Education is producing and distributing violent extremist material to children across Saudi Arabia and all around the world. The supposedly educational curriculums overseen by the ministry are more concerned with indoctrinating children than it ever was with educating them. That's demonstrated by the fact that the weekly amount of time spent by the Saudi student on the various religious subjects like monotheism, jurisprudence, Quran memorization, interpretation, hadith, so on, outweighs the number of hours that has to be spent on any given educational subjects, like, say, math or science. More concerning is what's actually being taught in those lessons. During my time in school, doctrines including but not limited to the following were taught. 1. Anyone who dies believing in any religion other than Islam will spend an eternity being tortured in hell. 2. A woman's body is shameful and is to be covered entirely in public. Not a single hair, eye, finger, or ankle is to be shown. And even the commonly worn niqab in Saudi Arabia, which has a slit for the eyes, is too immodest for the Muslim woman. 3. A husband has authority over his wife, and the wife has to obey her husband. If a wife is to become disobedient, then a husband has the right to beat his wife. 4. Men who have consensual sex with other men are to be killed. 5. People who leave the religion of Islam are to be killed. 6. Islam is to be spread through holy war. Since then, and since the ascension of Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, the ministry's educational books have been changed, and I've been told by multiple people that this means that the extremist materials that I've been taught are either gone or reformed now. So is this true? Unfortunately, I found out that no, it's not true, not in the slightest bit. As I decided to download and look through the current ministry-issued books, all of those childhood memories came back. I now have empirical evidence that it was and still is just as bad as I remember it. I'll now be briefly showing translated pages of currently used ministry school books on screen. So feel free to pause and read. They are respectively of the aforementioned doctrines 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Links to the images and to the full books in PDF form can be found in the video description. Teaching a child to hold such hatred and prejudice is child abuse, and it has long-lasting and serious consequences. As a child with questions that I knew better than to ask, my near-constant exposure to the concept of hellfire made me fear my own capacity for critical thinking more than anything else in the world. What if I leave Islam? What if I end up in hell? I desperately wanted to stop having those questions and doubt that I did. But it's like if I told you not to picture a pink elephant. The harder you try not to, the more you inevitably will. For me, the illogical nature of my religion was that pink elephant, and around the beginning of 2014, I finally realized that almost everything that I was taught about the world was a lie. I was 13 years old at the time and still had 5 years of Islamic school to complete as a closeted atheist. I went through a lot of isolation and periods of intense depression for more reasons than one. I had this huge secret to carry around that nobody can find out. I remember one day sitting through an Islamic studies class as the teacher was telling us a clearly made-up story about a conversation he had with an atheist, when out of nowhere, a classmate of mine whom I had previously considered a friend blurted out, "But he should be killed." The teacher casually agreed with him and continued with the lesson, but for me at that moment, a feeling of true isolation and immense existential fear washed over me. I now realize that I was the victim of serious psychological abuse, but for me at least, I knew that it was all bullshit. I knew that one day I might have the chance to get out and away from all of this. The same cannot be said about the majority of LGBTQ plus youth in Saudi Arabia going through the system right now. The same cannot be said about the vast majority of girls and women going through the system, going through this institutionalized degradation. This is something that I find intolerably disgusting. As much as this is hurting Saudi Arabia's children, this goes far beyond Saudi Arabia, and it goes far beyond children's rights. Saudi Arabia is building and running schools all around the world. It sourced over $200 billion for the building of Islamic schools around the Islamic world. It currently runs schools in countries like Indonesia, Pakistan, France, and the United States, among many others. What a child is taught informs how they treat people and who they grow up into. And teaching a child that non-Muslims are the enemy will make them treat them like garbage, as I, unfortunately, as a child did, and as most of Saudi Arabia's children do in the rare instances in which they do interact with non-Muslims. As those children grow up never leaving the echo chamber of Islamic supremacism and imperialist aspirations, learning to long for martyrdom and never knowing any other truth, the logical next step for many is to go to war against the infidels. It should come as no surprise then that this has in large part caused the dramatic rise in Islamic extremism and terrorism in previously more moderate Islamic countries like Indonesia and Pakistan. And it should come as no shock that a member of a prominent Saudi Arabian family, Osama bin Laden, stood at the head of the terrorist organization Al-Qaeda, to later orchestrate the infamous attacks on September 11, 2001, in which 15 Saudi Arabian men, among 19 hijackers, flew 2 passenger airplanes into the World Trade Center in New York. Those people came from a prosperous country that was built on British support and American dollars. They were by no means the victims of so-called Western imperialism. They had no legitimate grievances whatsoever. That's not to say that there aren't people, even terrorists, with legitimate grievances over irresponsible military involvement by Western powers. I think there are. But this was purely a matter of ideology. And I can't help but think that had those people received their human right to a proper education, they would have had a better grasp on reality and human decency than to commit an act so heinous. That's all I've got for now. I'll be posting more videos over the coming months in which I'll be reviewing and reading highlights from the ministry's school books, displaying them in full disturbing details for everyone to see. So stay tuned for that. Thank you for watching through till the end of the video. I really appreciate it. If you'd like to help spread this message, then please consider sharing this video if it's safe for you to do so. And if you'd like to see more future content, then please subscribe to my channel. Until next time.